All right. Well, today on the podcast, we have Tyler Green on the show. Welcome to the show, Tyler.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Fresh off second place at Western States. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm a little bit feeling a little unbelievable right now still.
Well, I'm super stoked that you were willing to do the interview so soon. I mean, I cannot believe it. I mean, it literally just happened.
Yeah, so Saturday, what day is it? Wednesday?
Yeah.
We just made it through an incredible Portland heat wave, so we're finally recovering today. It was like 115 degrees on Monday, and then it was a nice, easy 100 degrees or so yesterday, but now it's like 85, and I'm starting to actually recover now.
I mean, this weather is insane. We're in the 80s right now in Indianapolis, but we're going right back up to the 90s. We haven't seen the hundreds. Like this lady I interviewed for my other parenting podcast yesterday, it was like 114, and she lives in Canada.
Yeah, it's nuts right now.
It's so nuts. Okay, so second place, is this like, in your wildest dreams a year ago? Was this something that you imagined?
No.
Okay.
Not at all. I think it's always been my hope to be like a top 10 for just to Western States, like kind of the true podium sort of is they recognize the top 10 and invite the top 10 back. And so that's a pretty cool like landmark or milestone for an ultra running career, is to be in the top 10. And so that was always my hope. And I always thought I had like a chance of being, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. But as training went along this year, I started to say like, you know what, maybe I could go top 5. And if I could go top 5, maybe I could go top 3,
It's so cool. So 14th in 2019, right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who kind of watches Western States every year and has interviewed a few people who have been in that top 10, that does seem to be like the elusive, like that's what I want to be. And you don't have to go after the golden ticket if you're in the top 10. Mm-hmm. So that kind of feels good. Do you anticipate this will be like a regular thing for you? It seems like once people kind of get the bug, they're like that, they're Western States junkies.
I certainly have the bug. And at the same time, I have this kind of philosophy that as trail runners, we should be out checking out new trails too. Mm-hmm. And so there's so many other races that I want to do as well. And it takes a lot out of you to do a 100-miler. So while it's on my mind and definitely of interest for me to continue to do Western States, I'm also looking around and being like, what else is out there? There's a lot to explore.
Yeah, because it's like if you have the ticket now, so it's like, well, if you don't do it next year, then you're going to have to go do a golden ticket race, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I think you might have convinced me.
Oh, well, maybe you just run it for fun next time then, because you're focusing your efforts on the harder or the different trails like you mentioned. Yeah.
It's always for fun.
Yeah. Always what?
It's always for fun.
Oh, that's the best. See, that's what I love about your story. As I was kind of researching you a little bit, I love that it seems like you kind of fell into, competitive trail running just from your love for hiking and being in the mountains.
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, I ran in high school, did a lot of hiking, kind of out of high school, lived in Nepal for a couple of years and trekked around the mountains there. And I don't know why I never connected the fact that you could kind of marry the two mm-hmm. into like running on the trails. I mean, we did a little bit every once in a while, but it was never like that's all we should do is be out in the trails. But slowly figured it out, and I'm happy that I did. Okay,
so let's sidestep just a minute. Nepal. Where else did you live? Libya.
Actually lived in Libya. Yeah, I taught in Libya for a year.
Okay, what were you? Yeah, so were you there in both locations teaching, like fresh out of college, or what brought you there?
I spent a couple years in college prior to going to Nepal, and then went to Nepal on like a Christian mission trip, basically.
Okay.
And then so spent a couple years there, came back, finished up school, and continued on to get my master's in teaching. And then that was a time when they were at the school that I was working at was cutting teachers, or was letting teachers go left and right out of a big budget shortfall. and I was just getting my teaching degree and looking around and being like, and I got this random email that said, "We're looking for teachers in Libya," and this is directly after the Arab Revolution and the overturning of Muammar Gaddafi. And I said, you know what? I'm just crazy enough right now to be able to do something like that. So that was like, I got that email. 2 weeks later, I was on the ground in Libya.
Wow. How long did you live in Libya?
I think it was 8 months in total.
Okay. Are you so glad now, looking back in your mid 30s, that you did that at that point in your life?
That was a very tough year.
Okay.
A tough experience, but yeah, I'm certainly glad to have that just ability to have this perspective on a different country and different people, and to just to have had that adventure.
I really can't imagine. Were you like 22?
At that time I was 28 maybe.
Okay. What was so hard about it?
It's just a very difficult place to live. I mean, it was, I would say, legitimately dangerous.
Yeah.
Just like, I guess the craziest anecdote would be like seeing, this was more of like, there was a lot of times that they were, that former revolutionaries, they just like to shoot bullets in the air.
Wow.
And there was one time where there was this big show of force, and they were driving through the streets and shooting heavy artillery, like anti-aircraft artillery, kind of up and over our apartment.
Wow.
And you could see the tracer bullets going out. And this is a kind of a wild story for a running podcast.
No,
but,
I love the side stories. It's like my favorite part of this podcast. This is like very interesting.
Yeah. So that, so it was basically just watching these tracer bullets shooting over our apartment.
Wow.
Being like, oh, this is getting a little bit hairy.
Ready to go home.
Yeah, ready to go home.
Okay, so now you're in a much safer environment in a private school in Portland.
Yes, yeah, it's a little bit different.
Tell us about teaching health to middle school kids.
Yeah, so I'm a health and wellness teacher at an independent school here, and I'd actually originally kind of gotten into teaching high schoolers, but actually in Libya, I started teaching. I think I had, let me think, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. No, I think it was 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. Sorry. But when I got into the 7th graders class, I was like, oh, these are my people. I just like their goofiness. I think that middle schoolers are somewhat can often be a little bit misunderstood, mm-hmm. and if you can kind of just accept them as these goofy kids and be goofy along with them, it can be a heck of a lot of fun.
That's so cool and so important. It's such a hard time in life for kids, so to have a teacher that like truly loves working with that age group is so important. Yeah,
and our middle school, our faculty, the kids, like there's just, we always talk about like there's just this middle school magic that goes on in our building, and it's so for me, middle school was a fine experience, but I definitely didn't feel like I really knew who I was or that anyone really knew me, and I feel that, and this, each kid's experience is different, but that within our school, that the kids just, everyone knows one another, and the kids feel known and appreciated and accepted.
Yeah, I think that's so true with middle school. I think that a lot of people feel lost. Like I felt like in middle school, I was always trying to catch up. Like I was always a little bit behind all the other girls, and like, with like puberty and things like that. And I always just felt like I'm not ready for this yet, So, yeah, man. And to teach health too, you gotta do the sex education thing.
Yeah, that's actually, I don't know why, but I have some fun with it. It's, they're probably not enjoying it, but I find that it's a fine topic to teach. Yeah.
Do your kids know, the kids that you teach, do they know that you're a big ultra runner?
They do. Yeah. In fact, we talk about, one of the lessons that I like to teach on is like reaching the flow state and what the flow state is all about. And so, we talk about it with video games, for instance, and how like you kind of choose a level that's appropriate to your skill level, and that's what makes it interesting. But if you're on the lowest level and you're really good at your video game, you're not going to have very much fun. And at the same time, if you are playing this incredibly difficult level of the video game and you have no skills at all, you're going to be really frustrated. So trying to find that place where you're right in the middle of having the challenge level meets your skill level. And so we talk about that and I explain kind of my story of actually it's kind of the journey that I've had to go to Western States, of multiple years of trying and then finally getting there a couple years ago. And, that's kind of continuing. I mean, the race on Saturday was probably the ultimate flow state that I've ever experienced.
The ultimate flow state. I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's just like I'm trying to get my son to read books more. He's only 9, but it's like he just has to find the right book. He can't read one that's too easy, can't read one that's too hard. And I am like really in this like phase of trying to find that his flow state for reading. So it makes so much sense. And it's just like with workouts. I mean, this morning I just did a little baby interval workout and I'm not in great shape, but I was like, you need to do what's right for you. 15 times 1 minute. That's it. Nothing more. Yeah. Don't push the pace. Like, get in where you need to be right now. That's such a good lesson.
Yeah. And I think, in the age of Strava and being able to see how other people are training, it can be easy to be like, well, why am I not training like them? And just to accept like, no, this is actually the place where I need to be. So
good. Okay. So this weekend was your perfect flow state. I love that. Let's talk about the journey getting to that. And by the way, like everybody's praising you for the race for like your pacing strategy and not like trying to feel like you needed to go out all hot at the beginning. That's clearly something you've probably learned over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I find that's kind of my style of racing. Not exclusively. I mean, actually the first golden ticket that I earned to go to Western States, I went out in first, which is very unlike me, and I got passed a couple times, but was able to pass them back.
Okay.
But generally, yeah, it's like I like that the energy that you get out of passing someone, and that kind of feeds on itself.
Is that uncommon that you were able to pass back? I sort of feel like in ultras, once you get passed, you're kind of passed.
Yeah, that's often the case. I went through it, I think, a little bit of a down point at one point, but I had a quote from a friend of mine that was like kind of reverberating in my heart, resonating in my heart. That's what I should say. And it just said like, there's going to be a bunch of people are going to go out to war today, but there's only one that will be the true warrior.
I love it.
Something along those lines. And I took that and I was like, I gotta be a warrior.
So good. Who was the friend?
That's Alex Lohr.
Okay.
He's previously a flow track guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What was that race again? Which race was that?
That was the Bandera 100K in Texas.
And that's your first golden ticket?
Yes.
Okay. First golden ticket, you run in 2019, you get 14th, and you kind of like, it seemed like 2019, you kind of had a really big year, like lots of big racing, and then 2020, I feel like people that have big years in 2019, they're thinking, okay, big things are going to happen in 2020. And then 2020, you're like, okay, womp womp. But you went and chased all those FKTs.
I did, yeah. Well, and I thought 2019, I turned that into my year to really learn the 100-mile distance. So ran Western States, and that was the second 100-miler that I'd done. I'd done Leadville, but I completed the 100-mile distance. I probably ran and competed in about 60 of those miles, and then pretty much walked in the next 40.
You still got the cutoff though.
I got what was it, 25 hours, and they give you this like dinner plate belt buckle for the
But if you walked 40 miles of that though, you must have hustled hard in the first 60.
Yeah, I think I was moving pretty well, and I thought that I was running appropriately. I think I ran into some nutritional, maybe hydration issues, as well as the altitude, some confounding factors there. So anyway, like leading into 2019 with Western States, I hadn't, put together a 100-miler, and that was a concern. And so I started out pretty conservatively, and probably too conservatively. I feel like what happens with this idea of pacing is I guess I'm kind of working. Some people work by starting out really hard and seeing if they can stick it, and maybe they do and maybe they don't, and maybe the first time they blow up at 60 miles and the next time they blow up at 80 miles and the next time they put it together. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's on the other end of like, I'm going to put it all together maybe a little bit more conservatively, and then the next time add a little bit more aggression to it until I can run the full distance at my true potential maybe.
I wonder why? Is it because of how you entered the sport maybe?
I don't know. I guess I found success in the way that I race. I don't know. I don't want to put myself too much into a hole of like not getting out aggressively too. I probably should at some point.
Well, yeah, I know. Like I feel like that's what a lot of people say. Like at some point to really test your limits, once you found your flow or whatever it is, like you do have to like get aggressive from the start if you want to like see what your true limits are.
Yeah. I think, and actually now that I'm thinking of it, maybe this one, well, when I look back at my splits from doing the Wonderland Trail FKT, which is a circumnavigation of Mount Rainier, mm-hmm. that run, I had to go out pretty aggressively and just see where I was at the first kind of checkpoint to see if I was on track or not. I'm like, I'm just gonna get out there, send it, see where I'm at, and see if it's possible.
So yeah, of all your FKTs, we have Wonderland, we have Lost Coast Trail. Let's see, what else do we have here? You might have to help me out.
Yeah, the Timberline Trail is a big one for me. That's going around Mount Hood, and then the Loowit Trail is around Mount St. Helens. So that was kind of my big project. Is a few years ago I did the Timberline Trail, and that had been a huge goal of mine. And then with the pandemic, I thought, I want to get the big 3 circumnavigations of Cascades in our backyard. So had the Timberline and went after Mount St. Helens and Rainier.
Timberline, I read, is your favorite place to run?
Yes, definitely.
What do you love about it so much?
I think it's just because it's like kind of the backyard best trail. It just has a little bit of everything. It gets up into the high alpine so that you're in these beautiful meadows, and there's on the east side this amazing like rocky kind of moonscape, but it also goes into some old growth forests. So it's got just a little bit of everything. And then my family has this little quaint little cabin up on Mount Hood as well. So, you hang out at the cabin, go run Timberline, come on back. It's just kind of the ideal weekend. That's
so cool. Yeah, I read that you grew up on a volcano.
Yes, Mount Tabor, which a couple other Mount Tabor is just, well, it has a big place in my heart. So I like to brag that like Galen Rupp lived on the other side of Mount Tabor.
Okay.
David Laney, another ultra running legend, lived down the street from me. And my high school team, Franklin High School, they've become this really strong running program. So we like to say that there's a little bit of magic in the volcanic dust up there.
That's so awesome. I know you ran in college for 1 year. Where did you run?
Just at Mount Hood Community College.
Okay.
Kind of trying it out, but didn't have like a huge passion for running at the time, and kind of struggled with some injuries the year after that, and then went off to Nepal. So running kind of took a back seat, but got a lot of good hiking in at that time. Learned how to power hike probably from that, which is an important skill for ultra running. And when I came back, I started cyclocross racing, road cycling, a little bit of mountain bike racing. And it wasn't for another, I don't know, probably like 5 years before I realized or got back to my running roots.
Do you miss mountain biking at all?
I still do a little bit.
Okay.
Oftentimes it's only when I'm injured, but
yeah,
mountain biking is so much fun. And when I realize like, skiing or mountain biking is like, oh, this is this is when you're like truly like hooting and hollering and just like, whoa, this is a blast.
I've only done it a very few times, and not for a very long time. Like since I had kids, I don't think I've even done it in Brown County in Indiana. So nothing crazy, but my dad was into mountain biking for a long time. And I would get out there and just do like, I don't know, 10 miles with them or something, but it's hard work. It is so fun.
Yes. So fun.
Okay. So let's talk about getting to Western States, the second place. I'm curious about like changes you made with your training from, 2019 to 2021 to get you in that podium position, not just podium position, but like really podium position.
Yeah, well, like I say, 2019 was really the year to learn 100 milers. And as I kind of looked around the ultra running world, I saw that people who were running Western States, for instance, really successfully there were definitely instances where people were just going out first time and nailing it. And then there were a lot of guys that were consistently in the top 10. And I think the common denominator with all of them is that they run a lot of hundreds. They don't only run Western States, but they get out there and run, 2 or 3 a year. So I decided to run a couple after Western States, had a couple months in between each one. So Western States, 2 months break, Cascade Crest 100, 2 months break, Javelina 100, 2 months break, and then I was done. So that was kind of the first thing, is just kind of learning those longer distances. And then as far as actual training changes, a few things that I'd attribute to is really got into a robust strength training program. Both my wife and I don't know quite when we decided to do that, but we just kind of got down into the gym and started making, and living at a school. It was really advantageous.
You can just use the gym.
Fitness room, and actually to have that during the pandemic as well.
So nice.
Was pretty advantageous. So, so we started doing some lifting. That was like a 1 day a week, and we'd always jog down to the fitness center playing the Rocky theme song and getting all excited about it. And I think we really just kept that excitement for strength training as well. It's been really fun to see the benefits, for one, the improvements in the weights that we're lifting as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm connected with a really great strength coach here in Portland, Matt Walsh. And talking with him, he said, "Oh, you got to have that stimulus twice a week." So added on another kind of smaller workout, but made sure that I was lifting a couple days a week, really heavy. And I think I just found that to be so important, to just like feel like my body can hold up for the entire distance. I think it's a pretty monumental shift in my running.
Were you lifting at all during 2019? Like when you did the 3 back-to-backs?
Not too much. I would do some core work. Yeah. I call it central stability. Do some like single leg deadlifts, but not too much. Okay. Now it's like probably spend about. It really ends up being like 2 hours a week in the gym, an hour per session. And yeah, I found that to be so important. And it's not just strength training. Like we start with strength training, but we kind of have a periodized approach where it's like you start with just slow, heavy movement. As you get closer to race day, decrease the amount of weight and increase the speed at which you're moving that weight. And then kind of finish off with some plyometrics work as well. Anytime all those things are involved within the strength program, but you're kind of shifting the ratios around.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I've wondered about that. Like, what shift needs to happen like 4 weeks before the race if you're really focusing on the lifting and not just kind of doing the basics to keep things from getting injured.
Right. Yeah, I found that that sort of periodized approach. I mean, those final plyometrics are just all about like being able to produce a lot of force into the ground and pop off the ground more quickly, decrease ground contact time, and I don't know, it seems to work.
So a course like Western States, does your strength lie in like the climbing, the hiking, or like the parts that you can actually really run and like, get after it with the turnover?
I mean, I'm not a 104 marathon or half marathon sort of guy like some of the people out there. Like maybe
Jim Walmsley.
Yeah, and there were multiple others too.
Really?
And I'm also not. I think that there's this spectrum of people. There's the guys that are just like incredible. They could cut it in the roads, and then there's the guys that that primarily are just doing mountain 100 milers. And I feel like I can maybe kind of bridge the gap, and that I'm somewhere in between those two. Nothing spectacular on the roads or on the track or anything that I would be able to muster, but also really, really comfortable with hiking, for instance. I mean, I think that that's a strength of mine, and it's something that I don't mind doing in a race, even when, it feels like a running race. I should be running, but I feel really good with just going ahead and hiking.
Have you ever thought about like, let me just see what I can do for a road marathon?
I haven't thought about it too much lately. I mean, yeah, well, I should say I haven't put those ideas to work at all, but it's always something where I'm like, I wonder what I could run. I ran one marathon when I was like right before I went to Libya, actually, like maybe 3 weeks before I went to Libya. And it was like a 2:37, which is a
it's fast
pace. I think that I could probably go considerably faster now.
Yeah.
But I don't have too much interest in just putting in the time to make that happen. I like the trails too much.
Okay. I saw that your wife, Rachel, did the Olympic trials in 2020. So I wondered if that sparked any wonder what I could do out there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's super cool to be able to follow her and cheer her on. She's, such a social butterfly that it's all of her friends were all training for, another marathon, and a number of them qualified for the trials as well. And so there was kind of this nice snowball effect where she was just like, oh, I'm getting in with all of this and going for it. And it's been really advantageous for her, I think, in the trails as well to have had those experiences.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Not missing out on that opportunity.
No, not at all.
Okay. Tell us about how you guys met. I know you met at a race.
Yeah. Well, the first trail ultra that I ran was the Mackenzie River Trail Run. It's a 50K, beautiful course, fairly flat, and actually a net downhill course. I don't even know what year that was, but a buddy of mine actually paid my entry into the race, because I didn't actually want to race and he wanted to race. I was like, okay, I'll do it with you. And that was the year before I met Rachel. The next year, or then I got the bug for ultras. I signed up for 5 and went back to the Mackenzie River 50K the next year. And at the end of the race, Rachel and I we just happened to be like dipping in the river at the end of the race to get next to one another. And I was like, here, you want some of my soap? She's like, oh yeah, I'll take some of that soap. And we started chatting a little bit. I invited her over to the friends that I was spending time with. This was her first ultra as well, just a year later from my first ultra. And we started to chat a little bit, all of us together. But then I just I was like, well, maybe I'll see you around. I knew that we kind of lived in an area nearby in Portland. And then I was like, you know what? I gotta reach out to that gal.
Aww.
So I found her on Facebook and asked her if she wanted to go for a run or something like that. And we went running. So we kind of went on a few dates, and then I actually made a huge mistake and just said I'm not interested. and then we became friends for like 2 years. And then there was this moment where I actually, I was actually on a date with someone else, and thought, you know what, this gal is pretty cool, but really I just want to be spending time with Rachel. And that's when things are like, okay, I'm making moves. Let's go.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Were you just like commitment phobia? Like, I feel like, I don't know if it's more so of a man thing, but like, I don't know if you're still young. Like, do we really want to go there yet?
I don't know. Yeah, I think it was just me. I'm not entirely sure. I just know that I came to my senses as far as realizing just what a gem Rachel is, and couldn't wait another day.
Oh, I love it so much. I tried to break up with my husband in college, and he was like, "What are you doing? Why would you do that? Like, what is?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know. There's no reason." Kind of similar to what you're saying, and we laugh about it all the time now because he just kind of like called me out, like, "There's really like what? Why?" And I had no real good reason. So it resonates with me. She does seem like a gym, though. It seems like everybody knows her in the ultra community, and she's super fun and bubbly. And yeah. I was telling you before we started recording, I was like, I kind of want to interview Rachel.
Oh, yeah. I tell everyone this. I'm like, she's the real star of the show. She's she's the entertaining one. I mean, when we got into Olympic Valley at a couple days before the race, she had already run into a friend, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna go run and I'll see you later, bye. Gone. And just, yeah, she's just has so much life to give, and yeah, it's great to be able to do this thing with her, to be able to, I mean, do life as a whole with her, and also for us to be sharing this journey in running too.
Yeah, you both seem like you're very adventurous, like you said earlier. Every race is for fun. I kind of mentioned, do some for fun. You're like, no, every race is for fun. Do you both kind of share a similar view of that?
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I think there are times when it's like, I'm doing this out of obligation or something. And for instance, with Rachel, especially, I just noticed when she's having fun, she's nearly unbeatable. And if it feels like it's obligatory or something, then the race doesn't often go as well. So yeah, I mean, our mantra is, let me think about it.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
More mantras. Just that if you're running with joy, you can't lose. That it doesn't matter what place you are. You had a good time. You had an incredible experience. You won.
How do you balance that with also wanting to win and do big things, because it's such a great outlook, but I'm like, at some point there is a little pressure. You just got second place at Western States. Yeah.
I listened to Michael Gervais' Finding Mastery podcast a lot. And I remember there's something that really stuck with me. He said that he was in the locker room when the Seahawks won the World Series, the Super Bowl. And Pete Carroll's like, all right, now we have what everyone wants. And Michael Gervais is like, don't say it. Don't say the trophy. That's not the point. And Pete Carroll goes, we have the knowledge of what it takes to be our collective best. And I think that's a lesson in what it truly means to win, is that it's more about did we reach our full potential? And if I'm getting there, then there's a certain amount of winning, and there's always going to be someone better than me, especially when I live in the age of Jim Walmsley.
Yeah. I was going to say, first of all, I love that. And I've listened to several of his podcasts, and every time I do, they're so good. I love the way he interviews and kind of really just digs in with the person. It doesn't seem pre-scripted or anything like that. Definitely a great podcast if people listening haven't checked it out.
Absolutely.
But speaking of Jim Walmsley, so we'll dance back over to the race here.
Sure, yeah.
Once you were kind of moving up the field, 6th place, 5th place, you kind of moving. I know you ran with one of your teammates for a while. Did it ever cross your mind, maybe I can get Jim? Were you did you have intel, he's an hour up? He's already done? What was going on?
Yeah, I knew at mile 62 in Forest Hill, that was the first time that I really even wanted to know what place I was, even though I had an idea. And so I was running up this hill with my coach, he was kind of my first, he just paced me for 2 miles in this first little stretch. And he kind of gave me a rundown of where everyone was. He's like, Hayden Hawks is 25 minutes up. He's in second place currently. And then I was like, and Jim's just running away with it. And, and my coach was like, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So I knew that, that winning it would not be something that on my best day, and Jim's probably mediocre day, that I would be capable of doing it, that the circumstances would have to, would mean something had happened to that something had went wrong with Jim. I kind of knew that was the case. So, yeah, I'm not, and that just goes back to me running smart and running basically what I'm looking at when I'm going into a race is how am I going to get from point A to point B in my fastest time possible, in the fastest time that I can muster. And usually that's by, working on my personal pacing strategy.
Yeah, it seemed like in hearing you talk post race, I don't know if it was the I Run Far interview, but it just seemed like you're really good at staying in the moment, like right where you need to be.
Yeah, this is kind of a new thing for me, and kind of going back to some of the training strategies that I've employed too, is I don't know, when I started doing some more mindfulness practice. So just using the Headspace app, maybe 10 minutes a day, going through their different packs that they provide. And I knew that, well, this is going back to Michael Gervais. He's like, you can train your body, you can train your craft. And one of the things that we leave on the table is you can train your mind. And I wanted to train my mind. I didn't necessarily know how that mindfulness practice would apply on race day. I didn't have any instruction on how am I going to take those skills and use them on race day. What I realized on race day is that, especially when you get into the canyons, which is this notoriously hot and difficult stretch of the course that drops down into 3 successive canyons, that I knew that I needed to get to Forest Hill after the canyons in good shape, feeling good. And I also had this inkling that this was that this could be a special day. When you get that inkling, you start to think about what's the finish line going to look and feel like, and that's taking you out of the moment and what you need to do in the present, which is all about mindfulness. It's if you get distracted, notice that, recognize it, and return back to what you're doing right now, which is some focus on your breathing. So how that applied actually in the canyons was I would get excited about kind of how their day was going. And then I would say no, right now you are descending down El Dorado Canyon. And you're doing that in a way that's going to get you to Forest Hill in a good spot, in a feeling good. And I'd continue, I did the same thing. I'd I'm thinking about the finish again. No, you are in El Dorado Canyon, you're climbing up out of El Dorado Canyon, and you're doing it in such a way that you're going to get to Forest Hill in a good spot. And that was, I think, extremely helpful for me to just kind of be I'm working on this right now. This is all I need to worry about right now.
That's really powerful. I think that's just a total game changer for anybody listening, whatever your goals are, and maybe not even a physical goal, whatever it is, you can't focus on that end result because it'll cloud what you're doing right now. What mile is Forest Hill?
Forest Hill is 62 miles.
Okay.
And the saying goes, the race really starts at mile 62.
Okay. For all the Western States followers, they all know that, I'm sure.
Yes.
When did you start running with your teammate, and talk about how you guys kind of worked together? Yeah,
so from Forest Hill, there's a part of the course called Cal Street, which drops down into the American River, and then you spend maybe 4 miles running right along the American River. So it's a mostly downhill stretch, but there are some punchy climbs. And it's a little tricky because Forest Hill has so much energy that you can get really amped up. And that can, and then start running too fast going down there, and work yourself into a hole. Mm. When it should be a place where you should kind of be cruising. So there are 3 aid stations. They call them Cal 1, Cal 2, Cal 3. And at Cal 1, I heard that that the next guys up were like 8 minutes in front of me. And then at Cal 2, 2 of the guys were actually in the aid station. One of them, my teammate, Drew Holman, another guy, Tim Tollefson, who's a legend in his own right.
Yeah. You saw him when you rolled up. You were like, oh, here we are.
Yeah. He was in bad shape. I think it was either dehydration or just the heat. And he rallied really well, later on as well. So with Drew, I knew that I'd kind of, I'd closed up a gap, but he started feeling a lot better. And so we ran it was definitely more than 10 miles. It might've been almost 15 miles together. And there was, I think with both of us, there was some intention in like, okay, well, where's Hayden? Cause he was in second and we were running in third and fourth at this time. And we were talking to one another as saying like, let's work together to kind of close this gap down. And we were seeing that gap closed at the same time. Of course, at some point we are racing one another against one another as well. And so with that, I tried to stay cool in that position and not feel like I really had to make too many big moves. And I felt like I did have some pressure on him, mostly being behind him throughout this stretch. Mm-hmm. And then we came into about mile 85. Shortly after that, I thought, I can't leave this to chance. I'm going to need to make a little bit more of a decisive move. So I started I just changed gears a little bit and gapped him. And it's in this stretch of trail that goes kind of in and out of these ridge lines along a canyon wall. And so there's lots of twists and turns, a lot of tree cover. So kind of that, I had that out of sight, out of mind mentality of like, let's get away as quickly as possible so that he doesn't have any view of me. And hopefully he stops thinking about me.
Had you guys already passed Hayden?
No, not yet. Yeah.
Okay. So then you passed Hayden and he also passed Hayden.
Yeah. Hayden, had a tough stretch from maybe from Browns Bar, mile 90 to mile 80 or 95. And then I think Drew actually had some cramping and things that happened as well that were tough for him for the last 5 or so miles.
You must feel very well prepared when at mile 85 you can like switch gears.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing about this Western States course is that the last 20 miles are tantalizingly easy to run.
Okay.
If you should be pretty much running the entire thing, but
okay.
And it's those people that are running that stretch of the course that are going to probably run up into that top 10 position. And you need to manage yourself so that when you get to an aid station called Green Gate, where that stretch starts, that you're ready to run.
Ready to go for it. Are you running like at a pretty good clip?
Yeah, there's a lot of cloud cover, or not cloud cover, but like tree cover. So I couldn't quite tell what my GPS was saying. It was probably maybe 7:30s or something, maybe 8-minute miles.
Okay.
So, it's rolling as well. So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the pace was.
You're moving though. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're moving your body. Tell me what you think about all these women placing so high.
Oh, it's so cool. Yeah, that was some incredibly smart racing, and Beth Pascal's effort was world class, obviously, for her to be the second fastest running of the course on an extremely hot year.
Yeah.
But yeah, you always gotta, I'm always looking over my shoulder wondering who could be coming up on me. And it's not necessarily going to be one of the male contenders. I think that will just always be the case.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm actually going to be interviewing her in a couple weeks. And for everybody listening, she's a pediatrician.
Yeah. My wife actually spent some time with her down in Flagstaff and was just so inspired because my wife's in med school as well. and she's, balancing these two things, of medical practice and running as well. And to do that is challenging.
It is challenging. I think the sleep deprivation of something like medical school paired with ultra running would be just so difficult. Now, I know that your wife just got her doctorate. I didn't know she was in med school.
Yeah, she's in a MD PhD program. So it's kind of crazy.
I mean, I can't imagine. Is she running big miles right now?
Well, so she just finished her PhD, and then she had 6 weeks, 2 months worth of time between when she was finishing her PhD and going back to her MD. She did 2 years of MD of med school, then she did her research years, and then now she's back to do her final 2 years of MD.
Wow.
And so she had a little bit of a chunk of time when she didn't have too many school requirements. So that allowed her to get some great running in and do some racing and stuff. And now we're kind of talking about how do we adjust workouts to be, there'll be a lot of like mini workouts. What can we get done in an hour?
I love that. Fit it in.
Yeah.
We'll hear more from Rachel. She's going to come on the podcast, everybody. We're going to lure her on after Tyler's appearance.
We'd love to be on here.
Okay, so let's finish off Western States. Looking back at the race now, we're still so fresh, so your mind is fresh with it. Are there any like immediate lessons or pieces that you are already taking from the race that you'll carry with you for the rest of your life?
I mean, this is not an individual sport. That became very, very clear as I have two of my friends from high school who were crew for me, and people that I know from the trail running world when I got into that. So it was this great collection of guys that supported me all the way through, and without their sacrifices and their wives and partners' sacrifices to take care of childcare or dog care, all of those things, I don't think it would have been nearly as successful of a run. And we were just all in like one accord. Like, I think everyone kind of looked at me and knew that something special was possible. And there was like this great amount of belief that they had in me. I think that I'm usually like the last person to believe in myself, but I just keep getting these messages from crew and loved ones that like, no, this is going to be good. Like, okay, I'm going to believe you. So all that to say, whether it's the belief or the wheels on, or the rubber hits the road. What am I trying to say?
I get what you're saying.
When they actually, the logistics that they're putting forth, and keeping me cool and keeping me fed and all of that. It was a team effort.
Now you believe though.
Say that again.
Now you believe though. Like you believe in yourself now.
Yeah, that's a journey too.
Yeah.
It's like, now I've like got to do that, try to do this again so that it was real.
Yeah. Like was it a fluke or, but it wasn't. What is your coach like? Who is your coach, by the way?
His name is Matt Lay. He coaches for Charmin Ultra, and has a PhD in exercise physiology. So really sought him out with the idea that he could give me that. How am I going to get my body physiologically ready for these efforts? He's not someone who's necessarily going to like be a huge like cheerleader and you're going to do all this great stuff. But when he says something, he's like, okay, so I want you to work on some mantras. And one of the mantras that I think you should have is, why not me? Because I really think that you could do pretty well. I'm like, all right, I'll believe you on that one.
I love that. So it sounds like he has the formula, like he has a formula in his head for what you needed to do to train for the race. And I know we talked about adding in the heavy weightlifting and how you phased it differently right before the race. But what different running tactics did you focus on for this year? A
significant amount of like fast downhill running. Western States downhill course and your quads have to handle that. And strength training helps with that, but also it's got to be very, very specific. And so you got to do a lot of downhill running. That was a piece of it. And then Wednesdays, we would usually do like workout Wednesdays, or sometimes it was Tuesdays or Thursdays, but doing some faster, mostly tempo, either lactate threshold or aerobic thresholds work, just to move the needle there.
On flat
roads? It's mostly on flat or rolling
But
terrain.
you're at elevation.
I'm not.
Oh, you're not. Oh, you're in Portland. That's right.
Yeah.
Are you like, what are you throwing down for those thresholds? Like 7 mile threshold?
No, I was wearing Vaporfly, so that, you got to take it with a grain of salt.
True.
So I think getting into like 520s or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So sounds like more faster downhill running, more speed sessions than you were doing before.
And then, of course, getting like usually the weekends getting into the mountains. We found that I had some success doing like kind of what I call just like a training camp, like a 3-day, do 20 to 30 miles each day, and did a couple sessions of those in the buildup. And those have been really effective ways to get me ready for 100 milers. Okay.
So you seem like a person that really like enjoys life and basks in like even the simple things. So what are you like basking in now? You have this like second place. I'm going to call it a victory. The second place victory. What's this next week or 2 or 3 look like for you?
Well, as a teacher, I'm really reveling in like not having to go to work too much. I still have I'm coaching I coach our high school cross country team. So I'm getting them going. Right now I'm mostly eating a lot and sleeping and reading some good books. And we'll be doing some weekend adventures. And then in a few weeks, we're going to go to the Hard Rock 100, which is a classic 100 miler in Colorado, and have never been out there and really looking forward to that.
Are you going to cheer people on, or are you running it?
I'm not running it.
Okay.
No. Well, I'm going to be pacing my friend Dylan, who did the announcing of the
yeah.
You happen to have watched that.
I did also watch your post-race interview with him, and also listen to you on his podcast. So,
oh, great!
I'm familiar.
Thank you.
One thing I wanted to ask you. This is such a boring question, but I'm always just so curious. What are you eating during the race?
I'd say my base is usually Spring Energy and Morton drink mix. Well, Morton or Tailwind.
Okay.
But it's always a mixture. So as I start, I'll usually be eating a lot of gels, Coke at aid stations. And then as the race goes on, it tends to shift mostly to liquid calories, just because I'm not really interested in eating too much else. Love watermelon and cantaloupe. Boiled potatoes dipped in salt is a great one. I think that's probably about it. And then it's always a little bit strategic of like, there's basically a 15-mile stretch that's almost all downhill on that course. And so you don't have to work that hard aerobically, and you can spend some extra time eating. So, after running on that for a bit, I was like, whoa, I just ate 500 calories in that hour. That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
And it's all stayed down. So that's great.
What did you eat after the race?
They had some burritos at the start line or at the finish line. The next morning we went to breakfast, and it was like kind of a greasy spoon, gut bomb sort of place. But I found I was like, lox and bagel, that looks really good. And that was just right, because it had this kind of light, cool feel to it. But all the nutrients I think you need to kind of start filling back up.
Oh my goodness. I know the food questions are always boring, but I am always curious, and I love those salty potatoes. So good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you got to kind of eat. Well, my wife says, eat what your tummy tells you.
That's right. Okay. So one of the questions we're wrap up with into podcast, and I always ask people, what's something professionally or personally you like to do that you have not done yet? And anytime someone's coming off like a very big accomplishment, I'm like, I kind of hate asking this question because they're like, I just did something, really big. But do you have anything else on your mind that you're like, man, I really want to do that?
And you're thinking specifically with racing, or
just whatever.
I think, yeah, I think on the racing end, I love to do UTMB, would love to do hard rock and continue to dabble in those things. I think in life, man, having kids looks pretty awesome. So I think that at some point, that's probably what we need to be doing.
Yes, it is awesome. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of fun. There's nothing better. That's for sure. You love reading. I love reading. I'm always reading like 3 books at once. And so I always ask everybody, what's the best, most recent book you've read? But I need, from someone who loves to read as much as you, I need more than that out of this question. Okay. So let's start there.
You primed me for this question. So here's, I have to say that you have to read Brian Doyle.
Okay. Tell me more. Yet.
So Brian Doyle, he's as an Oregon boy, he's from Portland. I think, I don't know, maybe he's from New York or something. But anyway, he lived in Oregon for a number of years. He tragically died of brain cancer a few years ago.
Okay.
He is an exceptional storyteller, but has these just incredible lessons that come along with it, and just has an eye for stories and the metaphors that come, the stories as metaphors and lessons for our lives. So the one to start with is probably I've got it right here. What is it? One Long River of Song.
Okay.
But then he has some other, that's like kind of a collection of short stories and some of his poetry and such. But he also has a couple books called, one's Mink River, or another one is Martin. So like the pine marten, the pine marten's name is Martin.
Okay.
And just exceptional writing and storytelling, and you'll learn a ton from him and be really moved. On top of that, I send this to a lot of my friends. There's a essay that you can find online called How to Be Good.
Okay.
And that's a nice little window into his type of writing. So you timed me for this, and then I just want people to know that they should read Brian Doyle because it changes you.
Is he okay? First of all, how old was he when he died? Tell me he was old.
I'm not entirely sure. I want to say maybe like 60.
Okay, so not very old, but no. At least not 30.
When he was diagnosed with, as far as I understand, when he was diagnosed with cancer, he went on an absolute tear of writing and wrote books and essays, and just like so prolific. I don't know if he was just like, I need to pour all of these things out and let people know these things. What it was.
Is he a spiritual guy?
Yes, he is. He is Catholic.
Okay.
So there's kind of spiritual undertones within it.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it's overt.
Okay. What, are you still a practicing Christian?
I
don't know if practicing is the right word for it. I'm reading Richard Rohr, The Universal Christ now. Have you read that?
Wow. Okay, yeah.
Okay. So that's where my frame of mind is when I ask that question. I'm right in the middle of that book.
Well, I have just recently read Richard Rohr's The Universal Christ as well.
Oh my gosh.
Divine Dance and what's his other one? Falling Upward.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's definitely kind of where I'm at in my thinking. So if you want kind of a window into kind of my spiritual journey, that's where I'm at. Okay,
very good. I listen to Pete Holmes' podcasts sometimes. Mm-hmm. Have you ever listened to You Made It Weird?
Yep. And I listened to that podcast with Richard.
Oh, okay, yeah. And he talks about them all the time too. And I was at this local bookstore in Sanibel a few weeks ago, and I saw the book, and I was like, I gotta read this book. Like, I've been listening to Pete talk about him, and I'm kind of on that kind of journey myself, trying to figure things out. And I'm really glad I picked it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up in a evangelical, Presbyterian and then moved to an evangelical church for a number of years. And what I've noticed is that I'm reading a lot of Catholic writers
Yes.
right now. And so like Thomas Merton and Richard Rohr or Brian Boyle, and they all kind of have this kind of more, I don't know, a little more of a universal view on things. I don't know if I can put words to some of these transcendent ideas.
I know. I feel the same way. And I feel like I'm constantly reading and trying to figure out, what do I really believe? And I also have a really hard time like regurgitating what my mind is thinking as I read. And I'm always telling my husband, I'm like, will you read this with me so that then we can talk about it together? Because like, as I read each chapter, I'm like, I just need to like decompress this chapter with somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, a friend of mine bought me Universal Christ, and he was like, well, I actually bought this for you so that we could talk about it.
That's so great. He said he would do audio. So I actually just need to get into his phone and download it and be like, hey, on your run today, go to through chapter 1.
Sure.
Okay. Well, this is great. I feel like this question, like, I don't care about famous people, whatever. Who is someone fun, motivating, or inspiring you would like to have coffee, tea, or cocktail with?
Shoot, this was the one that I actually I was like, oh, let me think about that.
Richard Rohr.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the easy one of like someone like a Richard Rohr or Brian Doyle, just because I think I could soak up a lot of wisdom and probably hear some hard thing. Well, and this doesn't make it necessarily fun, but probably hear some hard things about how I'm living and who I am, and also hear it from a really real place of love. That sounds like a good coffee date.
I love it. Or Michael Gervais, he can really like fine tune your mental game.
Yeah, I mean, I think his podcast is basically just it's just sports psychology sessions, right?
I'm gonna listen to that today. Okay, what is your last message you want to leave with the audience today?
I think everyone should get to Western States at some point and go to the Golden Hour.
Okay.
Which, if you're not familiar with the Golden Hour, the race cutoff is 30 hours, and from 29 to 30 hours, everyone joins the track and gets to cheer in the people that are finishing, who've just been running for 29 hours and have had quite a journey through the night and into the next morning. And it is one of the most spectacular pictures of humanity, where everyone is just cheering these people on. And I think the lesson there is that, like, hardship isn't something that we avoid. It is a part of being human. That it's an essential experience of being human is to recognize and seek challenge head on, and to see the elation within that, but also to accept the challenges that we face. And you can see that happening on the track during the Golden Hour. Oh,
that's so good. What time of day is that?
I think it's from 10 to 11 p.m. 10 to 11 a.m.
A.m. Okay, so it's so did you go home and did you go back to your hotel and sleep a little bit, or did you stay out on the track?
Yeah, we slept for a while.
We slept a little bit. Okay.
And have breakfast and come. Yeah, which is, you're like, well, that's the thing about ultras, is that it doesn't matter how fast you're doing it. Everyone has succeeded.
Yeah.
And the journey of the person who's running 4:45 is spectacular, and the person who's running 29 hours and 59 minutes is equally impressive in a totally different way.
For sure. Yeah, I noticed one of your Instagram posts that I really loved was before the race, you talked about how, I chuckled at this because you're like, running 100 miles is like a frivolous thing, but what we're really doing is living life. We're doing the hard work that I think we were created to do, to invest ourselves in something like that. But I just kind of love that you were able to call it out. I always think about that with triathlons too. I'm like, such a selfish sport. You're spending so much time just on your own body and your own self, but at the same time, acknowledging A, that it is this frivolous thing, but B, that there's a lot of beauty in that hard work.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, Tyler. Well, thank you for doing this, and huge congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. It's really good to talk with you and get to know you too.